In this problem, we are told to simplify and to write our answer in the form a plus b times I. Now, since we're dealing with I raised to various powers, we need to go back and remember what I is equal to, and there's a pattern with all of these exponents. So let's take a look at the right side in the red. We see I equals, by definition, square root of negative 1. So I squared would be square root of negative 1 squared, which would just be negative 1. I to the third is equal to negative 1 times I, which would be equal to negative I to the fourth is the same thing as I squared times I squared. I squared is negative 1, so I have negative 1 times negative 1, which is a positive 1. And then I to the fifth will be the same thing as I to the fourth times I, while I to the fourth is equal to 1, so 1 times I is going to equal to I. So at I to the fifth, that's where it starts repeating. And then I to the sixth would be the same thing as I squared. I to the seventh would be the same thing as I to the third. I to the eighth would be the same thing as I to the fourth, etc. Okay, so now that we see the pattern, we could just continue that and write it out, or we kind of think through logically. So I to the 13th, to figure that one out, I could divide the 13 by 4 because we're repeating every four numbers. So 13 divided by 4 would be 3 with a remainder of 1. So 1 would imply that I'm looking at the first number in this pattern. So 1 would be the same thing as I. 2, if the remainder is 2, it's going to be the same thing as I squared. 3 would be corresponding with I to the third. 4 would be corresponding to I to the fourth. So I to the 13th would be the same thing as just plain old I. So 23, negative 2I to the 23rd power. The 23, I can do the same thing, divided by 4. I'm going to get 5 with the remainder of 3. So the remainder is 3, so it's going to correspond with the third number in this pattern, which would be a negative I. So what I have is negative 2 times a negative I, which would be a positive 2I. And then I to the 8th, if I divide that by 2, I'm going to get, divide that by 4, I'm going to get 2 with a remainder of 0. And I guess 0 would correspond with the 4, I should have mentioned that. So since the remainder is 0, it's going to correspond with the fourth number, which is going to be 1. So I have here plus 1. And the bottom, 12, I to the 12th power, if I divide that by 4, I have 3, remainder of 0. So that's going to correspond with the 1. I to the 10th, if I divide 10 by 4, I get remainder of 2. So it's going to correspond with the negative 1. So negative 2 times negative 1 will give me a positive 2. So when I simplify all of this, I'm going to get, on the top, I'm going to get 1 plus 3I. And on the bottom, I'm going to get 1 plus 2, which is 3. So my final answer, if I write it in the correct form, a plus bi, I need to make sure I separate the fraction. So I'm going to get that as 1 over 3 plus 3 over 3I, which would be 1I. So you have 1/3 plus 1I, or just I. It's your final answer.